Marriage counselors. What are the most common mistakes couples make? I've provided couples counseling at different points in my career. Some of the common mistakes I will often see are expecting partners to be able to read their mind and anticipate needs and wants. Goes with the first one. Lack of communication or comfort with discussing different topics, or one partner being uncomfortable with discussing a topic, which leaves both partners feeling frustrated or dissatisfied. Blaming their partner for all issues in the relationship and not taking ownership of their own role in dysfunction or issues. Not expressing gratitude towards your partner on a regular basis. Experiences and expressions of gratitude can have a really positive effect on psychological well-being as well as relational strength. Not giving intimacy in the relationship enough attention. This includes but is not limited to physical intimacy. Many relationships start with a hot and heavy phase, where intimacy can come naturally. As this phase diminishes, many couples do not spend the time and energy to consider how to maintain a healthy level of intimacy now that it doesn't just come naturally. Anyway, without knowing and working with a person or couple, it is difficult and potentially inappropriate for me to try to give direct or specific suggestions. I would encourage you to communicate with your partner and seek out a professional, either individually or as a couple, that can help you more directly make efforts to improve your relationship. Please keep in mind that every relationship is a partnership. Very rarely have I seen these types of issues in relationships be all the fault of just one person. For instance, it's not only women that engage in the mind-reading mistake, despite the stereotypes that people want to perpetuate. This mistake occurs regardless of gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, etc. These issues are usually dynamic and complicated in nature, and are a result of cognitive or emotional or behavioral or interpersonal patterns of each partner as they interact with each other. If you feel these issues are all your partner's fault, I would encourage you to try out individual counseling to talk about how you feel and learn more about how your cognitive or emotional or behavioral or interpersonal patterns may influence your experience in your relationship. Also, express gratitude. Not just in your relationship, but in your life. It can have such a positive impact on how someone experiences their day. It doesn't have to be anything big either. Be grateful that your coffee was good, traffic was lighter than normal, your partner gives the best hugs, it's a nice day outside, etc. Find something you are grateful for and take time to appreciate it. Story 2. Not a lawyer, but a paralegal. I always tell people never marry someone they wouldn't go into business with. Marriage is a legal business. It's a marriage contract. It's not like a contract you sign for internet service or to buy a car, but a legal contract nonetheless. One that creates a business relationship with the other person, and one that requires going to court and paying financial settlements to extricate yourself from. You have to get the court's permission to dissolve the legal contract. If you can't imagine yourselves, opening a dry cleaning business together, or starting the next great startup, or running a B&B, or opening a tire shop, or running a multi-million-dollar media empire, whatever it is, if you think of that and think things like, oh God no, they drive me crazy, they'd have wacky ideas, would never agree, I'd have to make all the decisions and not tell them, or anything else that indicates fear and loathing of the idea of going into business together, then do not. I repeat in bold flashing lights, do not marry this person. Because to marry them is to open a business enterprise with them. People in the past knew that marriage was a business arrangement. They set people up with eligible singles from other families. They knew that it creates a legal and financial contract and that people are more likely to be happy with other people who share their values around money and major life decisions. Yes, sometimes people marry for convenience or expectation rather than for love. But now we have people marrying for love in irresponsible ways. Not every love marriage is irresponsible, but enough of them are. They say people divorce over money, but they don't. They divorce over values. Because nothing brings out someone's values like money, or lack thereof. The decisions a person makes around money tell you more about who they are and what they value than anything else. If you can't agree with the person your partner is when it comes to money, if you can't understand their priorities, their fears, their hopes, their dreams, their goals, and what drives them financially, or if you look down on them for any of that or think you can fix them, or if they hide any of it from you, then don't marry them. I don't think that's a healthy way to look at marriage at all. It's like, my mom and dad love each other, but I know for a fact that they would be miserable if they ran a business together. But they're happily married. Have been for a couple years, most of my life. Story 3. Not a marriage counselor, but this is what my husband and I do. I go to bed much earlier than him because I'm a teacher, so I have to wake up very early. Every night when I go to bed, he takes a break from what he's doing and comes and lays down with me for about 10 to 15 minutes. Sometimes I fall asleep with him there, sometimes we just lay there and talk about our day without the distractions of our phones, work, etc. And sometimes, of course, it gets steamier. Either way, we do this every night without fail, even if we're upset with each other. It puts things into perspective. It's hard to stay mad about something like not doing the dishes after dinner when we're lying in the dark in each other's arms. My husband and I are very transparent about why we do this. It makes both of us very happy, but every couple is different. My unwarranted advice is to discuss it with your significant other if you want something like this and find an arrangement that makes everyone happy. I also want to add one more thing. If we are upset with each other about something, we don't just let it go because we're so in love with each other or something like that. Usually these moments of intimacy give us the necessary confidence and comfort to discuss these things together. So it also provides a good time for us to get things off our chests so we aren't holding silly grudges about something as comparatively little as not doing the dishes. Story 4. My wife has a degree in marriage and family counseling. One of the bigger factors in a successful marriage is couples responding to repair attempts during arguments or conflict. Repair attempts are often little jokes or olive branches to help overcome issues and arguments. Here's an example. My wife didn't buy movie tickets in advance for date night this past Sunday and they were sold out. It sucked. She laughed and sheepishly said, "Well, at least we get to spend more time together, staring longingly into each other's eyes." That was her rescue attempt. It works two ways, though. I also have to respond positively to it, which I did. We did a lot of staring longingly into each other's eyes last Sunday. Another real-life example of a repair attempt from a client. Last October, my boyfriend went out of town for a wedding and I stayed home. When he came back, I asked him about his trip a bit and was talking because I hadn't seen him in a few days and wanted to catch up. He was clearly peeved but kept saying he was fine when I asked, so I stopped talking, thinking it was bothering him. I suggest we take a shower so he can relax after a flight and he says fine. As we're showering, we go to switch spots so one of us can shampoo and the other can rinse. As we were switching, our bums rubbed together, and I blurted out, "Ooh, rubbing bums," and he immediately started laughing uncontrollably. I remember him saying, "God damn it, I was so mad at you, but how do I ignore that?" I think generally keeping a level head and being in a humorous state when discussing problems, while still being respectful, is the best way to go about it. Story 5. First, it is important to acknowledge that the physical representations of intimacy will change over time. Physical intimacy can come from many different sources. Good relations are probably one of the easiest ways to create intimacy, but they're far from the only way. I like to think of creating intimacy as creating a space. You're creating a safe, private space for you and your partner to be together, kind of like being in a bubble looking out at the rest of the world. It's not a perfect analogy, but bear with me. Inside the bubble of intimacy, the two of you are safe and together. There are no big walls or rifts between you. You're joined in that space together with connection, understanding, and patience, and all those classic love is things and all the bad stuff outside the bubble can't come between you. It is important that you allow yourself to prioritize your partner in these times. They need to feel that you want them in your intimacy bubble. It may help at this time to reflect on some of your favorite things about them, and it never hurts to remind them what those features are. Once you start to accept this idea of intimacy, it's not so big of a leap to imagine creating this space with simpler things like holding hands, walking arm in arm, a kiss in the forehead, or, of course, a good old cuddle on the couch. Story 6. Not a therapist, but I read an article once that I found very useful. I can't remember the exact terms, but basically, how you react when your partner reaches out with small problems for connection. It's not necessarily big hobbies or interests, but little things throughout the day that are sort of unconscious reaches for positive feedback from your partner. For example, if I see a pretty bird outside, I say, "Oh my god, come look at this cool bird." Or, "Hey, check out the song I heard that I really like." If my partner passively or blatantly rejects that, it feels bad, even if I don't always fully recognize that in the moment. Over time, those micro-rejections, as I call them, start to build up. And that's why people start to feel like someone doesn't really care about them. On the flip side, even just a little bit of positive attention and sharing in a moment makes you feel so good. Again, even if you don't realize it. Getting up and looking at the bird is saying, "This is important to you in this moment, so it's important to me." It's basically like those are the small shared experiences that build up a joint life, and if you start to neglect your partner in those small ways, you can grow distant. I try really hard now to never ignore or reject my partner's small reaches. I often don't care about the Instagram meme he wants to show me or the latest NBA news, but I'll listen, look, and laugh because I want him to feel loved and appreciated. I remember now, they're called emotional bids. Story 7. One of the most toxic things I've found in doing marriage counseling is when couples think of themselves as individuals who happen to be together and not as a couple. Not that I'm advocating enmeshment. That's not really marriage. That's having a roommate, or perhaps less than that even. Marriage is the union of two people. That's what the unity candle, sand, and knots are all about. There is a bringing together of two lives that is inseparable. If either member still conceptualizes themselves as a solely autonomous individual whose actions and dispositions impact only themselves, things will go bad eventually. They go bad because it results in a person caring more for themselves than their spouse. This is seen when couples spend money behind each other's backs because it's my money, why does it matter? When couples keep secrets from each other, which inevitably results in pain. This is seen when couples don't stop to consider their spouse's thoughts, feelings, desires, dreams, abilities, and strengths alongside their weaknesses. The remedy to this is to behave as a unit in small and large ways. If you're getting something from the fridge, see if your spouse wants something. It even helps in arguments. No longer is it spouse against spouse, but it's the married couple against the issue causing stress to the unit. When one person considers a course of action, their thoughts ought to be how it impacts the unit. For those in a relationship, are you finding these stories eye-opening so far? Then make sure to show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing so I can share more of these with you. Now let's jump back into the rest of the most common marriage problems. Story 8. This is really a part of relationships. People change and one of three things happen. Number 1, you change in the same direction. Number 2, you change in different directions and find a new arrangement for the relationship and new personalities. Number 3, you change in different directions and don't find a new arrangement. We had some friends who got married and we tried so hard to keep them from getting married. He was immature and she was incredibly immature. She had been engaged 3 times and each time she was dating the next person within a month of the engagement falling through. In one case, it fell through less than a month before the wedding and she was dating the new guy within a week. These are actually the 2 friends who ended up getting married. They constantly fought. I mean constantly. I've been present when he's taking off his ring and asked if she wanted it back. Last I saw them, they were still fighting constantly and I'm convinced the only reason they're still married is because they're religious and don't want to be seen in a divorce or don't realize how miserable they are. I don't know if they will ever mature, but knowing each one, I know that they will do so in very different directions. This is why people who have not matured should not get married. Story 9. I work with couples and their relationships a lot in my line of work and do some form of counseling, though it is not my job or training. But one of the common problems I see running in the midst of relationships or marriages that fall apart is a kind of selfishness. People don't quite realize that marriage works best when you're both acting in the other's best interest and seeking their happiness more than your own. It crops up a lot, but not exclusively, in intimacy. If your primary concern in relationships is you're not going to build any kind of bond or intimate connection, nor is it going to be much fun for your partner. Marriage is a lot of sacrifice, and the couples I see thriving are the ones who are each willing to make sacrifices for the other and for their family. Couples who get married thinking that the coming decades of marriage are going to be exactly like the dating or honeymoon phase, when they face major challenges or speed bumps in their life together, have a real hard time dealing with it. But I thought I was supposed to be happy. Story 10. I'm currently a student in a clinical psychology doctorate program, focusing on marriage and family. If you aren't already familiar with it, I would recommend taking a look at John Gottman's work on romantic relationships. He's one of the best-known researchers in this topic. Perhaps his most famous work is The Four Horsemen. In a 30-minute interview, Gottman was able to accurately predict which couples would divorce based on their interactions with each other, particularly when those interactions included number 1, criticism, number 2, contempt, number 3, defensiveness, number 4, stonewalling. Research from the Gottman Institute has expanded on this to provide a pretty comprehensive list of factors that lead to couple conflict and divorce. Gottman also addresses solutions to these issues, which primarily exist within his form of couples therapy. Take this all with a grain of salt. This is one perspective on relationships, but it tends to be a pretty robust and well-researched one, and it happens to be the one I'm most familiar with. My personal understanding of the issue is that the problems arise from a lack of humility and the challenge of getting out of deeply ingrained patterns and cycles of conflict, which generally require both partners to accept fault and extend grace. Story 11. Children. This needs more awareness and thought. For the love of everything that is good and pure, don't bring a child into a broken marriage expecting him to be the lifesaver. It has never worked and it never will. A child is supposed to be the consolidation of the mutual love of the couple. He arrives because the marriage is in a good place, not the other way around. I work with kids and trust me, most kids are fully aware when mom and dad are in a bad state and he's the only reason they aren't splitting. Also, I have seen the typical dumb parent who believed once the child arrived, his or her partner would have a change of heart and would be a better person. Of course, it didn't happen, and of course the child was caught in the middle of that crossfire. Trying to fix a bad marriage by having a kid is like trying to fix a crumbling bridge by driving heavy trucks over it. Why these people believe a child is the ultimate trump card for saving a marriage is beyond me. It's mostly done in a state of desperation. They have nothing else to offer for the partner to stay or if the marriage is crumbling, which is just a recipe for disaster. But it happens very often, unfortunately. Story 12. Divorce lawyer here. Talk about money. Talk about making love. If you're marrying someone with a bad credit score, you should know how and why they ended up with it, lest you find yourself in their shoes very quickly. A credit score can cost thousands and take years to rebuild. Know if they have any tax liens or liabilities. Are they paying child support and do they have any kind of garnishment? Who's going to be responsible for managing the finances? How many credit cards does the other person have and what are their balances? I've seen money end a lot of marriages. Another one a lot of people don't think of is actually talking about physical intimacy, not just having it. Do you enjoy what you have? Would you like to have more of it? Less? Would you like to see it changed? Do you or the other person have any weird fantasies? Just have the talk. Different wavelengths can be difficult to reconcile. Story 13. Not a counselor, but this advice I received a long time ago from a nurse. I was working a unit as a CNA, and the old, intimidating, and smiling veteran nurse, my favorite, on the unit walks onto the unit from lunch holding hands with her husband, a Terry Pratchett lookalike. My young 20-ish self commented that you don't see that every day. She retrieves her battered clipboard from the desk, leans into me, and says, "You want to know the secret, kid?" I say yes, because who doesn't want to know that secret? And there's this collective lean from the entire desk. Doctors, nurses, and support. Pens stop moving. People don't know how to grow and change together. You will change as you age. So will your partner. The question is, do you know how to grow and change together? And she walks off, answering a call light. Wisdom to hold on to. The girl you married doesn't exist anymore. She's grown up, hopefully, and changed. And hopefully that change is for the better, which is extremely rare. Story 14. Number 1. Keeping score. A partnership is a team, not a competition. Whether a person keeps track of everything they have done or everything their partner has done, it is a death knell for the relationship. This is one of the most common causes for resentment in a relationship, and you see it often when people use absolute terms to describe themselves or their partners, i.e., I always, she never. Remembering that each person has his or her own needs, abilities, skills, and boundaries is essential to a healthy couple. Number 2. Expecting that because your significant other knows you better than others and is around you most, they are aware of all your thoughts and feelings. Your partner is not psychic, and no matter how often they are around you or how well they know you, they cannot pick up on every nuance to determine how you're feeling and how they should respond. That is called emotional babysitting, and it cascades into a host of problems and unnecessary hurt. Story 15. Therapist here. I've served couples. The number one problem I see is overactive threat response, which creates anger and rigidity. People don't stop to turn down their defense mode and lose sight of love because all their energy is going towards being right or controlling the outcome. Of course, control comes from a place of fear, but fear and vulnerability feel too dangerous, so they typically get expressed as anger, frustration, or rigidity. Surrender to not having control. Accept what's in front of you and cultivate compassion, please. Because y'all rigid couples who just can't prioritize empathizing with each other over your fear response are driving me nuts. Remember that this is the most common case I see, not the only one. There are lots of folks who won't fit this pattern. So, there you go. Hopefully this video helped you avoid some marital mayhem, or gave you a perspective before diving into one. But hey, even the best couples make mistakes. If you want to see a wider range of relationship blunders, check out What Are the Most Common Mistakes People Make in a Relationship. Story 4 is relatable and most just limited to romantic ones. See you there.